Good morning. How's everybody this fine Thursday morning? You know what? It's pretty warm outside. I'm sitting out on the patio. It's comfortable out here. I love being outside when we can enjoy the nice weather. Well, our chapter that we're getting ready to read today, chapter 14, is called Erith. And you know what? He probably thinks we forgot about him. We've gotten busy doing other things with the mice and everything, and he's still probably waiting for Poppy to return. So I don't know what's going to be going on. We'll see. Erith ran among the trees, heart pounding, quills rattling. He tried every dodge he knew to escape, as if some great beast were pursuing him, though this beast was his own feelings. He climbed trees. He threw himself behind bushes. It made no difference. He still felt miserable. When he found an old hollow log, he plunged into it. There, surrounded by the stench of pulpy rot and moldering fungus, he hunkered down and stared out at the rain, but found no relief. Never had he felt so miserable. Gradually, the storm subsided. The rain ceased. Water dripped. A gray mist, clinging to the earth, slithered through the dark trees like forbidden thoughts. Erith crawled out of the log and shook himself. "Take hold of yourself," he muttered. His head back to the ridge-in stretch of the cottonwood tree he had climbed when Poppy had left him. This time he found it, but when he reached it and discovered she was not there, all his depression returned. "Where is she?" he muttered. "Why did she leave me? What kind of friend is she anyway? Doesn't she know I need her? She should be here helping me." With that, Erith wheeled about and trundled down the path he had seen Poppy take. As he came down off the crest, hold on, excuse me, I had to sneeze. Well, let's see where I was now. With that, Erith wheeled about and trundled down the path he had seen Poppy take. As he came down off the crest of the ridge, he saw no sign of Poppy, only the pond where beavers were hard at work. Erith stared balefully at the beavers. They seemed to be working nicely together. At least they were smiling at one another. "A family," he snarled with contempt. "A happy family." "Crabgrass up their snoots," Erith sniffed. "I'm going back to Dimwood Forest." With that, he turned, galloped up the hill, and plunged among the trees again, quickly passing through them. The next moment, he burst into an open area. Before him lay a sunken meadow filled with berry brambles and flowering vines. Paying no particular mind to where he was going, Erith hurled himself into the moist, clotted part of the thicket. It was a wild jumble, with plants growing so closely together he had to push and shove his way through the tangle of bushes. He was close to the middle when he was forced to stop. He could not move. His quills, caught in brambles and vines, held him fast. He was stuck. Though he could not move, and exhausted, Erith was glad for the rest, glad for the quiet, glad he could not go anywhere. "I'll stay here forever," he sighed, "till I die. It's better that way, and it won't be long either. Poppy was right. I'm old, very old." He closed his eyes and thought of home. He thought of Poppy. Momentarily, his anger rekindled. Then, grudgingly, he admitted to himself that it was he who had told her to go off by herself. Maybe her leaving him was a little bit his fault. He sighed. The more he thought about her, the more he missed her. She was always so good-natured, kind, and brave, his best friend. Perhaps he should find a way to tell her that someday. With a shake of his head, he muttered, "Pickle puke," and decided it would be better not to tell her anything. It wouldn't do. She might make fun of him, tease him, call him that horrid word, old, again. Still, he might find her a seed or two. He could leave them where she might find them, and if by accident, nothing more than that, if a porcupine didn't remain prickly, what could he be? Nothing. Eeyore settled down, relieved that it was impossible for him to do anything but stay stuck. It was better that way, much better. He didn't have to think or feel anything. He would just die. That, he thought, would show her. Goodness, he's really upset, isn't he? Well, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't know what my prediction's going to be, but I don't think we've seen the last of Eeyore. Okay, back to Rye in the Lodge, chapter 15. Everybody's in danger right now. We'll have to see what happens. When Rye had swum into the lodge, he was too exhausted to offer any resistance to Mr. Kanad. And by the time he recovered his strength, it was too late. The beaver had quickly constructed a cage of maple twigs and hard-packed mud, shoveled the exhausted mouse into it with his tail, then sealed the whole thing up. Rye was a prisoner. "Well now, pal," Mr. Kanad said with his usual heartiness, "the name is Castor P. Canal. Feel free to call me Cass. What's your name?" Wretch gazed mournfully up at the large beaver from behind the bars of the cage. "Rye," he said. "Absolutely delighted to meet you, pal." Mr. Kanad enthused with a big grin. "Where do you live?" "I used to live by the side of the brook." "Moved away, did you?" Rye's eyes filled with angry tears. "You forced us to." "Me? Force you? Not me. You could have stayed. We would have drowned." "Hey, pal, that was your choice. Life isn't fair. No one promised you a rose garden. Take the good with the bad, the sweet and the sour. It all works out in the end." Mr. Kanad offered another toothy smile. "Okay," he went on, "let's cut to the chase. What made you come here?" Rye, glowering, looked up at the enormous beaver. "To get rid of you." "Hey, pal, you are the violent type, aren't you? You make me nervous," the beaver grinned. "Where do you live now?" "Up by the boulder." Boulder? That a fact. Exactly where?" "On the ridge, overlooking the pond." Mr. Kanad's heart fluttered. Not by chance. That boulder right on the ridge that's got a bunch of plants growing around it. Yes, Rye answered. Well, bless my tail and soothe my teeth, Mr. Canad glowed. There's a piece of luck. Do you live alone? With my whole family. Your whole family, the beaver said. Better and better. Family man myself. I love families. This is a good day. Mr. Canad was thinking furiously. Here is a representative of that mouse family, a violent type. He breaks in here. Okay, I'll use him to pursue them, to move on their own. And it would keep my reputation for progress without pain. Why is it a good day? Rye demanded, becoming alarmed. What are you going to do to my family? Hey, pal, Mr. Canad cried. Nothing to worry about. I haven't the slightest intention of harming you or your family. You'll be as right as the rain, all tip-top, all the day is long. I'm as straight as a ruler. Rye, staring furiously at the large beaver, said, how can you say that when you've ruined everything? Not everything, pal, Mr. Canad chortled. The sun still shines, doesn't it? The moon glows, admit it. Life goes on. We've just changed a few things. Pal, when you stop looking at things selfishly, when you see the big picture, you're going to have to agree that Castor P. Canad tells it like it is. But for now, you're going to have to excuse me while I fetch my family. We need to have a meeting to decide what to do with you. With that, Mr. Canad plunged off the ledge and swam out of the lodge by way of the entry hole. Alone and depressed, Rye sat within the cage and clutched the twig bars listlessly. He was much angrier at himself than he was at Mr. Canad. Not only had he failed to do what he'd set out to do, he was sure his capture would be hard for his parents. As for Poppy, when she learned what he'd done, Rye had little doubt that she would think of him as a fool, and she'd be right. He was a fool. For a while, Rye tried to break the bars of the cage. He rattled them, he chewed them, but they were made of maple wood and were too hard to cut quickly. Then he attempted digging about in the mud and held the twigs to see if that might lead to escape. That too proved a failure. Mr. Canad had packed it down hard. Rye had no choice but to wait and see what the beavers did with him. He did not have long to wait. Members of the Canad family came into the lodge and examined him. And here's the beavers coming in, taking a look at Rye. Isn't he nasty, one said. What a little puny fellow he is, another said. I wonder what he expected to do to us, a third said with a giggle. He's so weak. Rye, sulking, shrank into the corner of his cage. Mr. Canad, standing next to the cage, called his company to order. Once in a blue moon, he began, beavers find themselves placed to do great things. But if big things are to be done, Castor P. Canad and company will be the one to do them. Here, here, murmured one of the beavers. Way to go, Cass, said another. All right then, Mr. Canad continued. We're ready to move forward and expand Canad's cute condos into something grander. How about a lake? Wow, fantastic. Too cool. Beaming, Mr. Canad went on. Of course, we'll call it Lake Canad. Here are the plans. He gestured toward the drawing on the bark. To make this lake, we'll need to put a dam over this boulder here. Turns out there's a mouse family living under the same boulder. Okay, we could just go ahead and build. They would be flooded out. But that's not our way, is it? Canad and Company has a reputation for being sensitive. It's important to keep that notion afloat. We need those mice to leave on their own. There was some beating of tails. Okay, how are we going to persuade these mice to move? No problem. Luck comes to those who work hard. Genius is 90% perspiration, 10% inspiration. Good thing I got the whole 100%. Now we have a visitor, a fine young mouse. Mr. Canad rapped on the cage. Goes by the name of Rye. Rye and his family live right under the boulder we've got the eye on. Keep going, Cass, one of the beavers called out, beating his tail on the ground. Okay, I'm going to mosey on up and have a chat with these mice. Tell them that my pal here is visiting with us, and Mr. Canad added with a toothy smile, if they want to see him again, they'd better move on. Hey, he said, grinning, you know what they say, walk softly, but carry a big stick in your mouth. You said you wouldn't hurt me, Rye cried out. Easy does it, pal. Not saying I am gonna hurt you. Remember, you broke in here. You're the violent one. I'll just warn your folks that unless they make amends by moving away, they won't ever see you again. Get it? It's their free choice. And I mean that sincerely. And his family applauded wildly. Mr. Canad grinned. Oh my, Rye's got himself in a real fix, doesn't he? Well, what do you think's gonna happen? Got any predictions? Let's see what happened. I'm gonna go ahead and read another chapter because it says, Poppy hears some news. Chapter 16. It was quiet in the mouse nest. In one corner, Clover tended to her 3 youngest children. Poppy was in another corner with the older ones, including Thistle and Curly Duck, telling stories about Dimwood Forest. Valerian was in the middle of the room, surrounded by children, giving them seed lessons. Now, this kind, he was saying, holding up a plump sunflower seed, is particularly nourishing and tasty. You never can go wrong with sunflower seeds. Rye and I know a particularly fine place to find them. He paused and looked up and around. Say, where is Rye? When none of the youngsters gave an answer, Valerian called out, anyone know where Rye is? Hearing the name, Poppy pricked up her ears and looked around. but said nothing. It was Thistle who called. He went out. Do you know where? Nope. Valerian shrugged and resumed his lesson. Poppy leaned over toward Thistle and whispered, "Do you think Rye will come back soon?" "With Rye, you never know. Poppy, please tell us some more about your forest." Thistle had grown very fond of Poppy. Poppy talked, but soon broke off. She could not concentrate. Thoughts of Rye crowded her mind. Besides, the warm, close underground air and the crowded conditions were beginning to bother her. "I think I need some fresh air," she announced. Promising to return quickly, she made her way to the ground surface. The storm was over. Though dusk had fallen, the air had turned muggy. Poppy sat back against the boulder and looked out. To the west was a lush band of pink and purple layered the sky. Eastward, a pale yellow moon had begun its climb. Fireflies punctuated the growing darkness with sparks of light, as if night itself had a bright pulse. As Poppy remained sitting quietly, looking at nothing in particular, she thought of Erith with a pang. She had not returned to him. Then she reminded herself how usually grumpy he'd been. She thought, too, of his repeated statements about his preference for being alone. Poppy decided she'd stay at the mouse nest for the night. Erith could wait. Putting her friend out of her mind, Poppy was glad to give herself over to thoughts of Rye. She wondered where he had gone. She had little doubt as to why he'd left the nest. It was her words about Ragweed, how she had loved him, and Hall had but married him. The distress upon Rye's face as she told the tale were as easy to see as the sun is in a cloudless sky. And yet, Poppy mused, Ragweed was no more. To speculate about what might have been was useless. Poppy reminded herself that she had taken this trip as a way of bringing an end to that part of her life. That had been achieved, even as she gently touched Ragweed's earring, aware how restless she was to start life anew. In fact, she thought with a bolt of boldness, she knew she wanted to share the rest of her life with Rye. Sighing, Poppy looked down toward the pond. Even as she did, she saw a beaver haul himself out of the water, giving himself a shake, sending a spray of water in all directions, then proceeded to waddle clumsily uphill, right in her direction. Poppy grew alarmed. She had never met a beaver before. Having heard angry accounts about them from the mice, she was not inclined to like them. She could see that, compared to her, they were enormous. Moreover, the approaching beaver's huge buck teeth, brilliant orange in color, seemed positively fierce. Dimly, she recalled the beavers and mice were related, second cousins twice removed or something like that. At that moment, she didn't feel related, only very small. The beaver drew near. He had a distinct musky smell. Poppy, not sure what to do, glanced around to make sure that, just in case the beaver meant her harm, she wasn't trapped. When they were about 4 feet apart, the beaver halted. "How you doing, sweetheart? The name is Castor P. Canad. All my friends call me Cass. As the philosopher said, a stranger is just a friend you haven't met. What's your name? Poppy. Nice, sweetheart. Very nice. You're just the one I wanted to talk to. Me? Poppy said. You live under that boulder you're sitting against, don't you? Well, not really, Poppy started to explain. I'm only just... Hey, save your breath, sweetheart, Mr. Canad interrupted. I know all about that. You used to live somewhere else, and you've come up here recently. Actually, Poppy tried to interject. Now, unless I'm holding the stick by the wrong end, and I rarely do, there's a mouse by the name of Rye who lives here too. Did I hit the nail on the head? Poppy started. Yes? Rye? He does live here. Good, I like coming to the point. I play hardball and call a spade. Is something the matter with Rye? Poppy stammered. Rye? Oh, the kid's as fit as a fiddle, right as the rain. Okay, Mr. Canad assured her, except he broke into our lodge. Broke in? Hey, I'm giving it to you straight. You heard me right. He broke in where he had no business breaking in. I mean, a Beaver's lodge is his castle. That Rye is head over heels in trouble. Trouble? Poppy cried, unable to do more than echo what she was hearing. What kind? Off the cuff, shooting from the hip, taking the fast lane, I'd have to say Rye is violent. But don't worry, he's perfectly safe in a cage I built in my main lodge. He pointed to one of the mounds in the pond, right there. But that's awful, said Poppy, staring at the lodge. You took the words right out of my mouth. He shouldn't have done it, Mr. Canad said. Now, sweetheart, I'm talking on the up and up. We'd like to build a dam right here on this spot. Expand Canada's cute condos. Anchor it to that boulder. To make a long story short, it would be better for everybody if you all moved. Do it in 2 shakes of a beaver's tail with no fuss, and you'll see Rye again. No worse for wear. But, of course, you don't have to move. Then what? Poppy cried. Look here, sweetheart, let's just say I don't want to beat around the bush. It's a matter of life or death. The choice is all yours. This is a free country. But what if we don't move? Poppy cried. Well, sweetheart, I'll be honest with you. I hope that doesn't happen. Because if you don't go, I'm afraid your pal will have met his Waterloo. Sink or swim, because your new home will be flooded too. Some of your youngsters might drown. Naturally, that would upset my family so much, filled to the brim with anger, you know. I can't say what they might do to Rye. Hope I'm not boring you. But the decision is yours. Remember, we don't want to force anything on you. Anyway, nice talking with you, sweetheart, and have a nice day. I mean that sincerely. With that, Mr. Canad turned and began to waddle back down toward the pond. Poppy, finding it hard to take in all that she had heard, stared after him. Her first reaction was to go racing after the beaver, tell him what she thought of him, and make him release Rye instantly. But Mr. Canad, as if knowing what Poppy was thinking, gave a great slap of his broad tail, sending out a resounding thump that shook the earth. So instead, Poppy remained where she was, watching the beaver go into the pond and swim off. Only then did she race down the entryway to Clover and Valerian's nest. Oh my. Well, Rye's still in trouble. I don't know what the family's gonna think. I don't know. You'll have to make your predictions. Do you think they'll move? Kind of looks like they almost have to, doesn't it? And do you think Mr. Canad will keep his promise and release Rye if they do move? He's kind of a nasty guy. I don't know whether I think he's too honest or not. We'll just have to wait and see. We will continue reading in the morning. Have a good evening. Bye.